Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and today I'm back with a video talking about some of the games that you may want to consider picking up in the PlayStation Store, specifically the PlayStation 3 Store, because we know that, well, sadly, it is going away very soon. And the wild thing about the PlayStation 3 Store is that it has basically 5 different consoles in there. It's a mishmash of just tons of really cool stuff. So you've got the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3. You also have PSP and Vita games. And a lot of these are going away very soon. Now, there is a lot of games in here. I believe the count is 2,337 games. And man, you know, you could talk all day about what is in here. And really for this video, I thought I would just basically highlight some of my favorites, as well as some hidden gems, but not all of them are going to be hidden gems. Some of them are going to be fairly common, but you know, I think they're worth playing, as well as some things that maybe you didn't necessarily know about, or maybe they're just a really good deal when you compare them to the physical version, you know, and how much some of those cost. Because as you guys know, PlayStation 1 games and some of these Vita games and man, some of these like more obscure games are like stupidly expensive if you try to get the physical. And so, you know, myself included, sometimes I get the digital just because it's so cheap and so convenient. And many of these you can play on the PlayStation 3, your PSP, your Vita, so they're very portable as well. And so to be clear, for this video, I'm going to be focusing on games that I think you should check out on the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation 3. If you like this video, then maybe I can do a second one where I talk specifically about PSP games and also PlayStation Vita games. Starting with the PlayStation 1. Now, here's a little interesting tidbit of information that I don't know if a lot of people know, and that is buried deep within the store. There are some Japanese import PlayStation 1 games that you can find and buy and download. Now, the weird thing about this is that they don't seem to show up in any of the lists. So if you go into the store and you sort by PlayStation 1, at least for me, they don't show up, which is really weird. You actually have to know the name of them, and then if you do a search, then they'll come up and you can buy and download them. Now, sometimes you'll see that they're listed for maybe the PSP, or maybe the Vita, which they do play on, but they also play just perfectly on your PlayStation 3. And so I have about 5 of these Japanese imports that I've bought over the last couple of years, starting with Gaia Seed. So Gaia Seed, if you were to go out and try to buy a physical version of this, it is a $400 plus physical PlayStation 1 game. It is stupidly expensive and very hard to find, but people really, really want to play it. And so it's awesome that you can get it here in the PlayStation, you know, store. I believe I paid $5.99 for this. So $6. Actually, almost all of these are $6, maybe $10 at the most, which is a hell of a deal if you just want to play the game. And so I've pretty much just stuck to the shooters that, you know, are often hard to find in the States here. You see Sonic Wings Special, a couple other ones here that, again, are just super awesome to play, you know, on the PlayStation 3, also on the Vita. That's usually where I also play these as well. They look and play great on there. One thing I do want to mention, though, I know probably most of you already know this, but there are settings when you play these games, and you can go into them and just make sure that you have the smoothing either turned on or turned off. For me, by default, it's always turned on, and that kind of gives it a soft look. I'm not crazy about it. I used to like it, but now I actually switch it over to smoothing off. The other thing that you can try to do, it doesn't work with every PlayStation 1 game, but you can also go in and change the controller from digital to analog. Some of these games will allow you then to be able to use the analog sticks, which is a little bit more comfortable sometimes. It doesn't always work, and you'll know immediately because you won't be able to start the game, but it's something that you can try if you have the game and you want to mess around with it. But it's not just all shooters either. There are some Japanese platforming and beat 'em up games in there. I recently bought The Rapid Angel, which is this kind of silly, over-the-top platforming beat-em-up game, as well as Outlaws of the Lost Dynasty. Again, all of these pretty cheap compared to what you'd pay for the physical versions. And then the other thing to consider about the PlayStation Store is that the list of games that they provide in it are dependent on the region you're in and the region of your account. So technically you could go and create a Japanese account for the Japanese PlayStation Store, and then you would get a whole new level of games available to you. Again, often way cheaper than it would cost to actually try to get the physical. So something to consider. I haven't done it myself, but if you guys would like to see a video of that, I would definitely consider it, because I know there are some great games in there that would be cool to get digitally. A couple more PlayStation 1 games that I think you should consider downloading because they are pretty cool. It seems like I talk about Klonoa Door to Phantomile a lot, but that's because I absolutely love that game. If you're not familiar with it, it is basically a 2.5D platforming game that has this really interesting mechanic where you can grab onto some of the enemies and use them either as weapons or temporary platforms to get to other parts of the level. It's a very unique series, and it plays extremely well on the PlayStation 1. Thankfully, I do have a physical version of this, but I bought the digital as well, just because I love it so much, and it's so convenient, again, to be able to play it on my PlayStation Vita. And then another game that you should definitely pick up, or games you should pick up, is Tomba 1 and 2. They're both in the PlayStation Store, and these games were definitely hidden gems back in the day. They're definitely getting more known now as I think more people have gone deeper into the PlayStation 1 catalog, but they're definitely loved and very unique. Kind of like Klonoa, they are sort of 2.5D platforming / puzzle games, but definitely more emphasis on the puzzle in Tomba. Basically what you're trying to do is, navigate this level, but what you do a lot is go back and forth. You're trying to solve puzzles, maybe you're trying to get something for a particular person. It's very adventure game based, but then it has this really cool mechanic where you can go into the level, and you see me pushing into the level here and then climbing up on that surface. So you're kind of going in the foreground and the background. Again, very similar to Kanoa, but this one's a little bit more deliberate. Now, this game has some kind of funky controls when you start off with. It's going to be somewhat confusing to figure out, but it's full of personality. It's got some great gameplay. It's got some really clever puzzles. I like this one a lot. Moving on to the PlayStation 2, this is where, I feel like a lot of these games are probably more known. I think it's because the PlayStation 2 was so popular, and there are a lot of great games in here, but probably the first one I want to talk about is the Mark of Kri. This is a game that I bought when it originally came out new, and played it and beat it, and it's pretty unique even today. You play as a badass warrior in this game that has a bird as a companion that sits on your shoulder, and then you go on missions for your village, and depending on the mission, you might either be fighting, almost like a fighting game, or you might do stealth, or maybe it's more platforming. Now, what I love about this game is the fighting mechanic here, because you see what's going on there is that there's this little beam of light. So I'm pushing the thumbstick to basically adjust his focus and assign an enemy to one of the face buttons. And now that a face button on the controller is assigned to an enemy, that is how you would attack them, but also start combos. And what's crazy about this game is that it changes all the time. So for instance, if you have an enemy that's assigned to X, also square and circle, well, if you take out circle, that leaves circle open to either reassign to another enemy or be part of a combo against the other two that you have assigned. It's crazy and really cool how this works. So for instance, if you want to attack X, well, you'll do X and then maybe square, square, circle. But if you wanted to attack the enemy that's assigned to square or circle, you might start with square, but then do XX, circle. It sounds confusing, but it's actually pretty cool. And combat feels more like a fighting game than a beat 'em up. It's a mix of both for sure, but you definitely have to block, and you have to be very strategic and thoughtful as to how you go into combat. And that's actually where the bird comes into play, because you'll see these little spinning, I don't know what they are, basically, little medallions that are put throughout a level, and essentially you can send your bird to those locations and then scout out and see exactly what you're going to be walking into. And that focus isn't just for combat, because it's also for anything that you would do against an enemy. So for instance, in some of the levels you want to be stealthy, so you would focus on an enemy and then it allows you to sneak up to them and then hit that X button and then, you know, silently take them out. So it's a game that's got a lot of depth in it. It's very good graphics, feels really nice. The sequel's also really good, and that's also available in the store. So if you like this game, if you're looking for something a little bit different that maybe you haven't played before on the PS2, yeah, definitely give Mark of Kri and also Rise of Kasai, you know, give them a shot. Next up is God Hand, and this is another one of those PlayStation 2 games that has definitely been going up in price. So it's nice that you can get the digital version relatively inexpensive here. So this game is, it's become kind of notorious over the last couple years. Maybe notorious isn't necessarily the right word. It's just one of those games that if you are into classic beat 'em ups, this is considered one of the best, or at least one of the favorites for hardcore beat 'em up fans. And it's easy to see why. You know, it's funny because when you first look at this game, it kind of looks like a budget title, but man, it is not. I mean, it is awesome. So you basically are this martial artist who is walking around with these blessed god hands that you can basically just destroy demons and just rip people apart. You kind of have to build up your energy to do that, but you can see here the combat is really fast. There's lots of really unique and creative combo attacks. It's just super fun to just beat the tar out of people, you know, like a good beat 'em up should. It's also wickedly funny. It reminds me a little bit of Trigun. That's kind of the reference that I pull from when I you know, play this game. It has that kind of silly, over the top, very funny, but also somewhat kind of dangerous vibe to it. So yeah, I was definitely getting a Trigun vibe when I was playing this game. God Hand is awesome. If you like beat 'em ups, you definitely have to check it out. Another cool thing that's found on the PlayStation Store that's frankly kind of surprising is all of the Shin Megami Tensei games that were released on the PlayStation 2. Many of these are considered absolute classic JRPGs. And again, it's amazing that they have all of them here. I think it's at least all of them. Now, I think a lot of people are familiar with the Shin Megami Tensei series because they played Persona 3, 4, and 5. That's definitely where a lot of gamers discovered it, especially here in North America. But the PlayStation 2 had some really great, you know, awesome JRPGs on there. And so you have Nocturne on there, which is a post-apocalyptic game and it just has its own awesome art style. Same with Digital Devil Saga as well. You have 1 and 2 there. I love the graphic style in these games. It just has a really cool, unique look to it. And there is a lot of gameplay here if you wanted to download and play all of these. I believe Nocturne took me, probably 60 hours to complete. It's been a while since I played that. And then Digital Devil Saga, each one of those is like 40 hours a piece. So there is a lot of JRPG love here. Now, if you like these games, if you kind of miss these type of JRPGs, you should definitely check it out. Moving on to the PlayStation 3, again, there is a lot of games I could talk about here, but I'm trying to pick my battles a little bit because I think most people will be familiar with some of the more popular titles. However, you may not know that Amplitude was rebooted essentially on the PlayStation 3. So what is Amplitude? Well, that was, I believe, the first or one of the first rhythm music games released by Harmonix back on the PlayStation 2. So they remade it for PlayStation 3, and you see me playing it here. I like this because it's all electronic music and it uses the controller. So you don't have to have any special instruments. It's not trying to do that. It's basically just for the actual PlayStation 3 controller. Really fun rhythm game. By the way, it's also available on the PlayStation 4. So if you happen to have a PS4, you can also get it there. But I believe the only other place you can play it is downloadable on the PlayStation 3. Another series that I often talk about when I'm showing love towards the PlayStation 3 is the Motorstorm series of racing games. I believe there were 3 main games that were released on that, and they're all fantastic, of course. But people forget that there was this digital download game that focused on RC cars, remote control cars. And as you can see here, it's a completely different looking game from those main entries in the franchise. The camera is obviously pulled off to the side, almost like you're standing there controlling a remote control car, but it still retains a lot of those Motorstorm physics that they would include in their games. And so the cars move and bounce around and slide around very, quote unquote, realistically. And so this is a pretty cool game that definitely has its fans. Now, just be aware though that the controls on this can be a bit challenging. It actually gives you two different control methods depending on which one you're more familiar with, or which one feels a little bit more natural. But you're definitely going to have to spend a little bit of time getting the hang of this game. It's easy to careen out of control and spin your car and stuff like that. But it's fun though, and what's cool about this game is that they did a cross-buy promotion with it. So if you bought it on the PlayStation 3, you could also play it on your Vita. One thing that I learned to love about the PlayStation 3 are the Move controllers. Now, when they originally announced, I was like, what's the point? But it was only when I started playing light gun games or on-rail shooters that I was like, oh yeah, okay, the Move controllers are awesome. And so I need to mention a couple of these light gun games that support the Move controllers, like House of the Dead 4. So as of the making of this video, the only way to play House of the Dead 4 is either on the real arcade machine or on the PlayStation 3. And again, it supports the Move controllers, so it's just perfect. And what I love about this game, and maybe you can tell by the footage here, is that they give you submachine guns in this game. So you are just mowing dudes down. Now, it compensates by giving you a lot of enemies to shoot at, but it never gets old. It's so awesome. And then another game I want to mention is House of the Dead Overkill. Now, this is a game that a lot of people played on the original Wii, and that's a great version of it. However, this is a much improved version, especially visually. It's just like a complete upgrade from the Wii version, and it's cool to see. So I love that game on the Wii. It's incredibly over the top and silly and outrageous, and it's cool to have it again on the PlayStation 3. And by the way, you'll notice in the PlayStation Store that they often have bundles that you can buy. So for instance, with this House of the Dead 4, I actually bought the bundle pack, which included 3, 4, and also Overkill for, I think it was $29 or something like that. So, that's a pretty good deal. It's $10 a piece, right? Another game I want to mention, because it's one of my favorites on the PlayStation 3, is one that many of you have already seen before, you know about it, but it's also, sadly, I think the last one that they've ever made in the Sly Cooper series. That, of course, is Thieves in Time. I really loved the Sly Cooper series on the PlayStation 2, and so when it came time for them to announce a new one on the PlayStation 3, I could not buy it and play it fast enough. And I really love this game. It's big. There's a lot going on here. You're going through time like the title suggests, which is cool because each one of the levels is different from the other. So there's a lot of variety here. Plus you get to control different characters in the story and throughout time. So the gameplay mixes up quite a bit as well. And the graphics look great, as you can see from this gameplay footage. And another cool thing about this is that it was also cross-buy. So if you got the PlayStation 3 version, well, you could play it on your PlayStation Vita. Again, such a cool bonus. But as of the making of this video, it's the last Sly Cooper game released, and who knows if we're gonna get another one. So if you're a fan of platforming games, stealth, great characters, great story, you definitely have to check out Sly Cooper Thieves in Time. All right, guys, well, it's a quick look at some of the games I think you might consider picking up while you can, while the PlayStation 3 store is actually up and active, at least for a couple months, I think. But with so many games in there, this is obviously just the tip of the iceberg of games I could recommend. I would love to know down in the comments if you are interested in me doing one specific for the PlayStation Portable, the PSP, or the PS Vita. That might be kind of interesting, huh? Maybe even roll in the PlayStation TV. Also, if there is a game in there that we missed, please post it down in the comments below so I can download it and perhaps others can as well. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.